Hi folks, good morning. My name is India Celestine from Centro, Esperanza, Caridad. And today I want to touch on the topic about Espiritismo. And basically I want to touch on some basic things about Espiritismo, just so people could familiarize themselves with some key points and stuff, trying to be a little bit more organized, because sometimes I could go into a tandem and stuff like that. I got so much stuff going on, apart from the fact that I'm nervous. This is fairly new to me and stuff. So, I'm trying to put myself out there and stuff and offer something tangible for folks that they could implement in their practices, and just general information that I have acquired over time as a Espiritista, as a Mediaunidad, and just learning, studying, and just basically putting myself out there, and trying to develop my gifts and stuff. I want to touch on a topic on basic general beliefs in Espiritismo. Okay, first and foremost, the one belief that we do have is we believe in a supreme God. We believe in a spiritual world filled with spirits that do not occupy a human form, basically disincarnate spirits. Espiritistas believe that these beings can influence our existence in various ways. Also, the Espiritistas can also influence the actions of the spirits. Espiritismo has never had a single leader nor center of practice, and the practices can be different and vary greatly between practitioners and groups. So, depending where Espiritismo is practiced, there could be variations of it, whether in Europe, whether here in the States, whether in Puerto Rico, Cuba, Brazil. There's variants of Espiritismo, and I will touch on that topic later on. But right now, I just want to focus on just certain basic things that I feel that folks need to understand as they want to delve into Espiritismo and ancestors' practices and stuff, as it relates to Espiritismo. And also I want to elaborate that Espiritismo has never had a single leader nor center of practice. I just want to state, there have been individuals that have had, they were very influential folks in Espiritismo, particularly Allan Kardec, various members of our community in Brazil, prominent members, that have been very, very influential in in spreading Espiritismo far and wide, and whole doctrines and belief systems were built on much of their studies and their dedication and stuff. As far as centers of practice, Espiritistas don't necessarily have like a church or synagogue. Most folks that practice Espiritismo, depending what branch or where it's practiced, some folks might have like a little simple shack, a little simple room in their home, or some places have centers dedicated to the practice of Espiritismo and development and laboring spiritually and learning and cultivating, nurturing their gifts. So I just wanted to emphasize that we might not have a specific church or temple, etc., but some of us had over time created spaces that we dedicate to the practice and the practice of Espiritismo. I want to touch base on in the beginning, particularly in the beginning in the Caribbean. Many spiritual practices already existed, particularly with the indigenous original folks that made up the population of the various islands, as well as with the practice of forced introduction of slaves of African origins. Many forms of practice of spirituality in general already existed. So I wanted to emphasize this point, okay? Because some folks think that, Espiritismo just came out of nowhere, and subsequently, people were always practicing Espiritismo in the islands, in the Caribbean in particular, and just in general, and throughout the world. There's always existed spirituality. There's always existed some form of spirituality, shamanism, curanderismo, or some type of spiritual practices have always existed throughout civilization. Espiritismo is not something new. Espiritismo has always been here since the beginning of time. Understand? They just went about it with different names, and their practices were fairly different, you know. But I'm gonna speak on the topic in general of Espiritismo as how it relates within the context of the Caribbean diaspora. You know, Espiritismo there. You know, I might touch base on Espiritismo from Brazil and other places, but I want to focus my attention Espiritismo as it relates to the historical background of the Caribbean and its development, you know. So there was always different forms of spirituality that existed on the islands, particularly amongst the indigenous folks, the native folks, the you know, the Arawaks, the Taino, etc., etc., etc. They've always had a form of spiritualism. They've always engaged with spirits. They've always had influences with spirits of nature, shamanistic practices, curanderismo, santiguando. You know, they're you know, Espiritismo is not something that just came up and, you know, like, because a lot of people are under the impression that there was not some type of spiritual identity already there in the islands. There was already, you know, there was always an identity there, you know. Was it popular? No, because, you know, like, back in those times, you know, like, any exercising of your own individuality or your spiritual practice was frowned upon. And often to the extent that, you know, the prospect of you possibly being burned alive at the stake or murdered or killed was real, you know. So but, you know, I want to emphasize to folks that we always had an identity. We've always had spiritual practices in some shape, way, form in the islands. This is not something new. I just want to emphasize also that the introduction of Espiritismo as well as other forms of religions was forced upon the slaves as well as the indigenous folks. So because of that, oftentimes folks within, you know, like folks that historically were oppressed, you know, synchronization became a common practice, you know, where they mixed their own personal belief systems with the belief systems of their oppressors, or they took bits and pieces they felt that were positive, and they basically meshed them with their own belief systems, creating new systems of practices, you know, basically as a way of empowering themselves, but also as a way of synchronizing their religions, as a way of preserving their own spiritual identities. You know, folks in the Caribbean often did that. Slaves did that, you know, slave masters came and you couldn't light candles, you can't have drummings, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, because in their eyes, it was barbaric. In their eyes, you know, it was devil worship, or, you know, like, it was frowned upon. Oh no, this is not tolerated, because, you know, they always wanted to keep people divided, you know. And when you congregate, you know, in religion and spirituality and stuff, they felt that somehow, some way, that you guys were somehow gonna empower oneself and possibly rise up against the oppressor, you know. So oftentimes you was not allowed to practice your religious systems or your religious beliefs. And if you did, you had to practice it in secret. And what better way to practice your belief system than to hide it or synchronize it with the oppressor's belief systems, you know? So, you know, the oppressor comes in the room and they see, like, say, you know, a Santa Barbara, you know, and they see you lighting candles Santa Barbara and saying prayers, hymns, or singing songs and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, okay, they, you know, okay, it's you know, it's not a threat, you know, but behind that Santa Barbara, certain key things about that picture, that deity, that deity or that saint correlates somehow, somewhere with the identity of whether an African spirit or indigenous spirit that people felt a connection to, and basically they hid that image, to represent that specific deity, or force of nature and stuff. So it was very common practice that there was synchronization going on. So like I said, it was a form of preserving one's own personal beliefs, religion, as a form, but also as a form to empower oneself, as well as add new dimensions to one's practices, And also I want to touch on the topic is that there are different practices of Espiritismo that developed over time in different parts of the world. And I will discuss that further in another video, because there's Espiritismo de Cordón, there's the doctrine of Espiritismo or scientific Espiritismo as it correlates or relates to the doctrines and teachings of Allan Kardec, and there's Santerismo, there's Espiritismo Criollo, Espiritismo Cruzado. So we're going to touch on those topics at a later video as best I can. With this said, thank you for listening, thank you for being here, and I hope that somehow, some way, that my contribution to my community will somehow be able to impact your practices and empower you and in a positive, enlightening way. I would ask folks to subscribe, share, hit the notification bell for folks that might want to seek out a spiritual reading to begin their spiritual practices, or just basically just find out what's going on in their lives and stuff that they might need clarity on. I will have my link down in the bottom to my Facebook page, Centro, Templo, Esperanza, Caridad, here in the Bronx, where you can schedule your readings. I do readings online. I do readings through the phone. And I also do readings in person. And so just basically hit the like button and just support me in my endeavors. This is fairly new to me. I'm still a little nervous. I'm still a little scared. I'm trying to get over that because I tend to be very private. I tend to be very, like closed and stuff like that. My practices are very personal to me. So me sharing with the world and stuff like that, it's a positive thing, but it's nerve-wracking, So please support me as best you can. And I hope that this is positive. And I wish everyone a blessed evening. And may everyone feel that my contribution somehow can be positive in their own spiritual practices. And I love you guys. God bless. Be well. Stay safe. And luz y progreso to all my peoples. Thank you. Good evening.